It is your Thursday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you are all having a great day out there as well. Lots to get to today. Of course, Kent Youngblood joins me here in just a little bit to talk Lynx basketball. Surviving for now without Napheesa Collier. Kent indicating that her injury maybe not terribly serious, more of a pain management thing, a thing that she's been dealing with, this plantar fasciitis in her foot. Sounds like she could still be available for the Olympics potentially, but wouldn't imagine that we'll see her very much in the short term. Lynx play tomorrow. Then, of course, on Sunday, they host Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever at Target Center, expecting that game to be a sellout. Both the upper and lower bowls, 18,000 or so for that game. So Kent and I will talk about all those things here in just a little bit. Got some NBA revenue stuff at the end of the show, some USA Soccer stuff at the end of the show. Gophers budget stuff in just a minute here. Interesting kind of back and forth between athletic director Mark Coyle and the Board of Regents on Wednesday. First, though, what I miss, going to start with the Twins and the continuation of a remarkable run of consistency. This is a team that you will recall was wildly inconsistent for the first two and a half months of the season. And you know, some of it was how they were playing. Some of it was who they were playing, right? Like they were not good at the start of the year. They were 7-13. They didn't look like a good team. They weren't hitting. The things they were counting on weren't going well. And then, of course, Royce Lewis got hurt in the very first game of the year, missed 2 months. It looked like it was all going downhill. But then they rallied from a 7-13 start, went 17-3 over their next 20 games. Then it was a downslide again, then an upslide. It was just like back and forth. And some of it was, played the Yankees, played the Orioles, played the Guardians, who they're 0-14 against combined this season. That explained some of it, but that didn't explain all of it. Some of it was just how they were playing, the lack of consistency to how they're playing. Well, they have arrived at this 53-40 record now with a much more consistent approach over the last month and a half, especially the last 3 weeks or so. Get a load of this. After splitting a doubleheader with the White Sox on Wednesday, kind of doing it the hard way, had to come back and rally in Game 2 from a 2-0 deficit, won that game 3-2, dropped the first one 3-1. First game they've lost to the White Sox all season, by the way. But they win that series because they won Game 1 of that series in extra innings, 8-6 on Monday. They come back, they win that series, best 2 out of 3. They get 2 out of 3, in that series. 6th consecutive series that they have won 2 out of 3 games. I don't know if I ever have seen this exact kind of thing play out. It started with the series in Oakland. Lost the opener 6-5, but won the next 2, 10-2 and 3-0. Dropped the opener against the Diamondbacks in that series, but won the next 2. Dropped the opener of a series against Seattle on the road, but won the next 2. Won 2 out of 3 when they came home to play Detroit, losing only the middle game of that series. Won 2 out of 3 against Houston, again after dropping the first game of the series. And then, of course, winning 2 out of 3 against Chicago, like I just mentioned. Winning the first and third, but dropping the middle game. So I guess if you look at this on balance, if you look at how they've done it, they've lost the opener of the series 4 out of 6 times, and the other 2 times they have lost the middle game. So it has been 6 straight series, not just that they have won, but that have been decided at the very end of the series, where they've had to win the last game of the series, in many cases the last 2, but every time they've had to win the last game of the series to win the series, and they have done it all 6 times. And again, it's been different kind of heroes in each case, in each game. Carlos Correa and Brooks Lee back-to-back home runs in the second game of the doubleheader. Yesterday, Twins have homered, by the way, in 28 straight games, getting close to a major league record, 28 straight games that they have hit at least one home run. That is quite a statistic. That consistency they're showing is a good kind of mark going forward, especially as we consider the possibility of postseason play. They have ascended to a 53-40 record now, like I said, putting themselves firmly in the conversation, just 5 back of Cleveland for the division lead, but also, definitely in the wild card mix. They would be the second wild card right now. Now, that brings me to this.
Time to check my social media, yeah. To see who loves me online. Hashtag blessed life.
This from Bob, who writes to me and says, hey, I don't know if you've looked at this, but I enjoy your show. It may be a passing possibility, let's hope, but if MLB season ended today, and yes, there are 70 or so games left to be played, the Twins would play, who else? The Yankees in the best-of-3 series, all in New York. That's the opening round of the wild card. It says, my friends keep telling me there is no curse. Ha! He's right. The Yankees right now have fallen down to the wild card. I think I talked yesterday a little bit about how they had lost, 17 of 23, really struggling right now. GM Brian Cashman is on the road trip with them saying, hey guys, let's get it together. They had such a hot start to the season. Like I said, blitzed the Twins when they played them. Twins caught them at the wrong time, it seems. But here, they would play the Yankees if the season ended today. A best-of-3 in Yankee Stadium, and that's where this comes into play, right? The Twins are getting good at winning 3-game series 2-1. That's all it would take if they're getting consistent. If they're getting kind of that kind of feeling that they can win 2 out of 3. That's what it would take to beat the Yankees. Now, I think everyone, just for the sake of their own sanity, for the sake of competition, for the sake of just best practices, would probably prefer the Twins avoid that matchup. The Yankees are still a really good team, probably just going through a swoon. Very possible the Yankees come back and win that division. They're only a game or 2 behind Baltimore still, even after all of the losses in the last few weeks. But I think the Twins would have preferred to avoid that. But just knowing that they are getting better at winning 2 out of 3 should tell you at least that they would have a fighting chance in that series. Now, let's move on. I wanted to talk about another story that I saw. The Gophers athletic department kind of trying to figure out their budget going forward. We got this lawsuit that teams settled, NCAA settled with power conference teams, $2.8 billion settlement to pay back current and former athletes missing NIL opportunities, things like that, revenue sharing. That is going to hit their budgets starting in the 2025-26 school year. Now, Mark Coyle, Gophers athletic director, said a few weeks ago in talking to the Star Tribune that those payments would probably cost the U about $21 million a year as part of their budget. $21 million a year on their budget. How they're going to pay for that and what Gopher sports looks like going forward was a big piece of the conversation when he did his annual presentation, Mark Coyle, to the Board of Regents on Wednesday. Marcus Fuller, Star Tribune, Gophers men's basketball, college athletics writer in general, was there listening in to the conversation, the video presentation he did. And interesting quotes from Mark Coyle, not necessarily surprising. He says there's no doubt there's going to be some financial pressures as we try to navigate this new chapter of college athletics. So we'll have to take a hard look at all of our sports and what we provide our student athletes. Now, what that means for different sports is going to be different things because there are the revenue-generating sports and then there are the non-revenue-generating sports. We don't call them non-revs anymore. We don't call them the non-revenue-generating sports. We call them our Olympic sports. It's a much nicer, much softer euphemism for the sports that are meaningful, that should be part of the experience, but that do not drive revenue. He said, I think you can see in our Olympic sports, for example, some of the experiences our student athletes have might look different. All programs are trying to figure out how to manage the back payments to the house settlement and how to determine the revenue sharing model going forward. sounds like they're going to focus on regional non-conference traveling. So probably not hopping on a plane a lot for your non-conference travel anymore. Interesting. Slowing down new facilities projects, just reading from Marcus's story, and possible scholarship reduction. That wasn't something that came up Wednesday, but apparently he has talked about that in the past. Now, they've already cut programs in 2020. They cut men's gymnastics, men's tennis, and men's indoor track and field, saving money, complying with Title IX, things like that. U of M Regent Mary Turner asked if she should anticipate any more sports cuts to be prepared for something like that. In response, Coyle said, as we face these new challenges, ideally when you look at our 22 sports programs, we need to focus on what we provide our student athletes. I think it's going to look different. I would imagine it will. I don't think they know exactly what it will look like, but I think he kind of gave a preview of what is on the table right now as they navigate these budgets. Now, some of the shortfall will be made up. Some of this $21 million will be made up by increased TV revenues, right? There's an influx of teams coming into the Big Ten. 4 new teams coming in next year, more revenue, things like that. Media deals are going to be big because they're getting teams from the LA market, things like that. So it's not like there's going to be less revenue from that standpoint. But that revenue, by and large, going to the programs, I would imagine, that generate the revenue. Football, men's basketball, men's hockey, women's basketball to a degree generates revenue as well. Women's volleyball. Like, there are things that generate revenue, although in terms of the ones that consistently drive the budget, it is generally at most schools, football and men's basketball. Now, men's hockey at the U does generate a fair amount of revenue as well, does kind of help balance the budget sheets, but it is the big TV sports that really drive all of that drive ticket sales, that drive donations, things like that. That makes it essential that they are good in those areas, and that will be a big thing going forward. Can they continue to grow those programs? Can PJ Fleck rally the Gophers from what was a disappointing year, especially with a tougher schedule coming up? Can Ben Johnson sustain the Gophers men's basketball program's progress, even though they lost so many players to the transfer portal? It is going to be a fascinating next few years for Gopher sports. Mark Coyle foreshadowing it on Wednesday with the Regents. We will see where it goes from here.
I'm Chris Hine, Timberwolves beat writer at the Star Tribune and the first 5-time guest in daily delivery history. Thank you for listening to this podcast. This work is made possible by our Star Tribune subscribers. For unlimited access to the articles mentioned in this podcast, our coverage of Minnesota sports from pros to preps, and even all of Rand's future blog posts about how the Timberwolves should trade for players they will never get, go to startribune.com/subscribe.
Let's talk Lynx basketball today with Kent Youngblood from the Star Tribune. Kent, you cover one of the most successful teams so far this year, 16-6. I might not have predicted that at the start of the year, and I don't think a lot of people did. I saw what the over-under victory total for the Lynx at the start of the year was 16.5. They are going to probably get past that before the Olympic break. Right now, though, dealing with injury to their best player, but they've still won 2 in a row without Napheesa Collier. What can you tell me about the status of her injury, and also just the fact that they can win without her, and what that tells you about this roster?
Well, they can win against the 2 of the worst teams in the league without her.
Yeah.
And the first one, it was a struggle at home. Last night was kind of a breeze, but they're not going to force her back. They want her ready for the Olympics. They're not going to do the disservice of having her play in a game and then not be able to play in the Olympics. So we'll see, but I wouldn't expect to see her Friday in Seattle.
Will she? I mean, do you think it's like not so serious that she could still play in the Olympics? Is that what they're thinking? That's what they're hoping?
She's been dealing with this off and on for her whole career.
Okay.
So it's a management issue. It's not like it's new.
Okay. Well, that's good at least. Is this but this seems like it was maybe a little bit, is this more serious than it's been, or how are they kind of treating that piece of it?
They're just calling her day to day.
Okay.
She was moving on pretty well last night. I've never had it, but people who have say that it's a very tricky deal. You can feel good and then try to do something and get hurt again. So they're not going to rush.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because Seattle's playing pretty well right now.
And it might mean she misses Sunday's game. Obviously, that one, it's not the next one on the calendar, but a lot of people have been circling that one for a long time, ever since the schedule came out a few months ago against Caitlin Clark and Indiana. You were telling me before we started recording, like how big of a deal this is. Not just, she's, going to all these places and it's been a big deal, but like the crowd they're going to get is going to be probably a sellout, right?
Yeah, I think they'll sell out Target Center, both bowls. Their business, their head of business, Carly Knox, told me that it'll be the single biggest revenue day in franchise history. Part of that's obviously the number of people there, but I mean, obviously, too, ticket prices is a little higher than they used to be. But
Yeah.
when you consider all the playoff games they've played, that's still saying something.
Well, it is. And, thinking about just you get Caitlin Clark for one game, and it's a pretty big, for a league that still isn't even close to the same financial level in terms of salaries and TV contracts as the NBA or other pro leagues. Like getting a crowd that's 10, 12,000 more than you're used to is a pretty big deal for you revenue wise.
Yeah, and it's going on all around the league. I mean, you've had teams move to bigger arenas just for that game. I can't speak for the whole league, but just from talking to people with the Lynx, this so-called resentment of Clark, I think, is a misnomer, or at the very least overplayed, because I don't think they'd be doing charter already if it weren't for what had happened to her early in the year. I think that the water is rising and every boat is rising with it. They're about to negotiate a new CBA, and these ratings that these games have been getting are going to help that. I mean, anybody who's resentful should be, checked out, because whether or not other people are getting less attention they deserve, the fact of the matter is that more people are watching this league probably than has ever watched it.
Yeah, and she's being watched so closely. Like everything that happens to her, from her, becomes a big story, a national story in a lot of cases. I think it's settling down a little bit, and we're just talking about her as a player a little bit more. And it seems like her game is calming down a little bit more too as she gets a little bit more comfortable in the league. What do you think of Caitlin Clark, the player, so far in the WNBA?
It's interesting that the hype was at its highest at the very start when she struggled the most. Now she's still in and she's playing well, and it's just like, oh yeah, okay. She's cut down on the turnovers. She's already established herself as one of the better rebounding guards in the league. And I think her turnovers would be even lower if her teammates could handle some of the passes she throws at her.
Right.
She'd be a great player. I don't think anybody ever said she wouldn't be. But I mean, there's a acclimation process to being a rookie in a league with only 12 teams and 12 players on each roster. That's only 144 of the best players in the world. It's going to be it's a step. And she's making it. Indiana's a far better team now than it was in the first few weeks of the season when they were seemingly playing every other night. I think the Lynx might be the last team that she'll face.
Okay.
That hasn't faced yet. And I think it's, while the Lynx might have benefited from getting Seattle right off the bat, I think they might have to deal with a bit more difficult Fever team than they would have maybe a month ago.
And it's not just Clark. I mean, obviously Clark is the one that Lynx fans are going to see right away, but Angel Reese is having a good rookie season. She's an all-star. The player the Lynx could have had if they would have done the draft differently. They had their reasons for not, and you can't argue with the way they've built their team this year, but that's an interesting kind of dynamic this year. But she's come into the league and drawn a lot of attention and backed it up with the way she's playing too.
She landed with a team that was perfect for what she does, right? I mean, if she was on the Lynx roster, where would you play her?
Right. That's true.
Because she is a person who has to play within 8 feet.
Yeah. and that's not that they're playing this year.
And that she would have helped the rebounding that this team has had.
Right.
But she probably, I mean, this is a team that has decided to kind of buy into the analytics and play out sometimes a 5-out system.
Right.
And maybe that is because of the personnel they have. But
Right.
I mean, she's a 4, and so is Napheesa Collier. I mean,
do the math.
maybe in the long run with the draft picks they get, and if Coney can develop, it'll be a win-win. But boy, that has gotten a lot of comment, hasn't it?
Yes, it has. I mean, but again, it would probably get more comment if the Lynx weren't 16-6 right now. And
actually, I disagree. I think that if they had not taken her and they were floundering, people would be saying you could have had her. But
right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I think maybe, yeah, I think that the success maybe have muted that a little.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I think they were even more if they were not succeeding right now. But you can't argue with what they're doing and the way they're doing it. Like, the other night, Bridget Carlton goes 6 of 7 from the field, 4 of 4 from 3-point range. Second time this year, she went 4 of 4 at LA. Maybe she should spend all her time there. The Lynx don't want her to go there, but man, she shoots 100% on 3 this year in LA. But that's an example of a player who seems to be thriving in the way they're playing right now.
Well, I think that the way they play, the reason that they started so well is the same reason that they've been able to play well without Collier.
Okay.
Because it's a share the ball, extra pass, defensive-minded team that really does have a chemistry where nobody really cares whether they are the ones scoring or not. And that's the sort of team that can maybe get through an injury to somebody because it's not like the entire offense all season has been, we're going to post up Fee or
right.
pick Fee or pin down for Fee and she's going to score. I mean, she scores a lot.
Right.
But, I mean, Carlton has ascended. She's become more aggressive. She's the only Lynx player in history to have 2 perfect 3-point games with at least 4 attempts. And you think of some of the players who have played on this team, and she's got 3 of those games in her career, which is the most by a Lynx player. I think Zandelicini is really ascending. I think Heidemann is settling into her role.
Mm-hmm.
Having said all that, I think it'll be really, really hard to win in Seattle without Fee on Friday night.
Yeah, I mean, she's you take your best player out of the lineup, and you're right. They played Seattle twice right away, right, and beat them both times.
Season. And the funny thing was that the narrative, because that was still back where nobody thought the Lynx would do anything. The narrative was, well, they got all these new players and they haven't gelled yet. What they didn't mention was that the Lynx had a bunch of new players and they had gelled.
Right. But now Seattle's players are starting to come around and figure it out, right? It just took them a little longer.
They're going to be motivated. They're tough to beat at home to begin with, and they lost 3 games to this. I mean, I think they have 7 losses, and 3 of them are to the Lynx.
Right. Well, Lynx, 16-6, and they've beaten a lot of good teams. But they've beaten New York and Connecticut already this year, right?
They've not beat Connecticut.
Oh, they haven't beaten Connecticut. It was close. They had the game against Connecticut that they should have won, but they got kind of hosed at the end, right?
He got hurt.
Yeah. Okay, but they had the one earlier in the year where there was the kind of the bad call at the end of the game.
Overtime,
yeah. So they've been competitive with the best teams, generally speaking. I mean, so let's say the Collier injury is manageable and she's able to come back at pretty much full strength after the Olympic break and it doesn't flare up again. Like what's the ceiling? Like are they good enough to contend? Are they good enough this year to play with a New York or a Connecticut in the playoffs?
I think matchups are a really big part of it.
Okay.
It's a team that struggles at times to rebound, and Connecticut just rebounds the heck out of the ball.
Yeah.
They have not figured out a way to stop or even slow Alyssa Thomas. They just struggle with that team. So, but on the other hand, for some reason, they seem to match up fairly well against New York.
Right.
They've beaten them twice, including the Commissioner's Final.
Right.
So I think that has a lot to. I think they can. I mean, it depends on how the matchups fall, but I think they can. They should get to the semifinals, and then it's all bets are off. I mean, at that point, home field advantage should probably play a big part of it.
Yeah, and it kind of depends on who you're going against too. If you wind up as the 3 seed and you play, New York as the 2, then it's, maybe it's a better matchup. But if it's Connecticut, it's a little bit different. So, just kind of evaluating this team then, like everything's been pretty positive so far. What do they need to get better at if they're going to, compete at that level? Is it rebound? What is it that they need to figure out?
They need to rebound defensively better on a consistent basis. It's interesting that they still don't give up a boatload of second chance points because their defense is so good that even when they give a second possession to somebody, they usually get a stop.
Yeah.
But as the competition gets better, they have to rebound better. And they have to, Fee aside, they've been a pretty healthy team.
Yeah.
In terms of key players,
sure.
Right? And they have to, so much of it is with this condensed Olympic schedule, it's just staying healthy, having everybody available.
Let's bring it back to Caitlin Clark for a minute before we go. What do you think things will be like on Sunday? There's a potential sellout crowd.
It'll feel just like the Big Ten final.
Okay.
Because there's going to be so many Iowa fans.
Okay.
There's going to be Iowa TV stations. There's going to be multiple Iowa papers. It's going to feel just like it did in March when they won their second of back-to-back Big Ten titles, in my opinion. I think it's going to be very, very loud. I think there'll be a lot of Caitlin Clark fans. I don't even know if they're going to be Fever fans. I think they'll just be Clark fans.
Yeah. Well,
but it'll be an atmosphere. There's no question about it.
This isn't the only place they can go from Iowa. Like you can go to Chicago. You can go to an Indiana game. Not too bad from why here for all the Iowa fans, you think? Well,
she's from Des Moines.
Yeah.
This is the closest place in Des Moines.
Okay.
This is the place when she'd come up and watch games back in the day. I don't know. I just think that, that plus the history she has at Target Center, I think it'll be, I think she'll be very, very much looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, it should be a good time. Glad she's here. Glad, we've had her here a lot. Had her here for the regular season against the Gophers. Had her here, obviously, for the Big Ten tournament. And now with Indiana. Speaking of the Gophers, before you go, they started practice not too long ago, right? Well, their outlook is pretty good, isn't it?
Well, I think the Big Ten got exponentially more difficult.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. With the new additions. Yeah. You think?
Well, they could be much better and still struggle to win games in the conference.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the expanded Big Ten, although I am looking forward to being able to watch Juju Watkins for a couple of years.
Yes. Right.
But in a conference, you should play 2 games a year against your opponents.
Yeah.
And we only play one team twice this year.
That's crazy. Yeah. That just doesn't feel
ridiculous.
Right. Doesn't feel right.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's money. It's money. And
of course. Yeah.
This is great for that part of it. But I am looking forward to seeing Juju and USC, UCLA, Oregon, and Washington. Are you kidding me? Come on now.
Yeah. Is women's basketball the sport where the Big Ten got the best 4 teams? I think it is, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it should be fun. We'll keep an eye on that and maybe talk to you a little bit more about that season when it gets closer. I'm sure we'll talk Lynx again soon, although they get a pretty big break here in about a week, right? The Olympic break starts the 17th. Is that their last game before the break?
Wednesday camp day is their last game before the break.
Oh, camp day. That's your favorite day to cover, isn't it?
Just between you and me, I'm pushing hard for our very capable intern to cover that.
Gets kind of loud in there on those Wednesday afternoons. Well, we'll see. Ken, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. See you later.
Great stuff from Kent. Like I say every time I talk to him, nobody covers the WNBA better. And he proves it every time we talk. Great stuff. Big game coming up Friday against Seattle. And, of course, like we talked about, the Caitlin Clark game Sunday at Target Center. One more after that, then an almost month-long Olympic break for them to get healthy, to get rested, and recharged for what could be a push, not just for the playoffs, but for a playoff run. Let's finish with the cooler. Couple little things to get to. Not so little, but things I'm going to mention quickly here. One, NBA reportedly agreeing to a new media rights deal. This number just jumped off the page at me. 11 years, $76 billion. You wonder why salaries are what they are. You look at, oh man, look what Karl Anthony Towns is making. Look what Anthony Edwards is making. Look at what all these salaries are. Look at how much the payroll is, $150, $200 million per team. Look at these franchise values. A battle over the ownership with the Wolves right now. This is driving a lot of it. Revenues are astronomical right now in the NBA because live sports programming is still one of the very last must-see in the moment live TV things where you can drive advertising, all these media deals. This contract isn't just, of course, TV anymore. It isn't just network TV anymore. It's streaming. Sounds like they're going to give some rights to different partners. You're talking about deals, games going to ESPN and ABC, but also NBC, Amazon Prime, things like that. So you could see a splitting up of some of these packages, much like the NFL has done. But 11 years, $76 billion, a deal that would start, I believe, in the 2025-26 season. Just a lot of money at stake here. You will see salaries go up. You will see the cap go up. You will see a lot of impact from this. I think the very first big deal was, 7-8 years ago, you saw the cap jump. That is when numbers became like monopoly money in the NBA, and it is not slowing down anytime soon. One more thing, Greg Berhalter out as U.S. soccer coach. I am sure we will talk more about that on Friday's episode with John Marthaler. Going to talk Loons soccer. They are in a tailspin right now. A lot of that having to do with the players they were missing for injury and for these, big tournaments going on, Copa America, the Euros, things like that. They've been missing a lot of guys that could help them. Those guys, some of them are back already, could be getting a little bit better off here now, but a big losing streak for the Loons and big questions for USA Soccer as to who they will hire to replace Greg Berhalter. John and I will talk about that plenty on Friday's show. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Thursday. It's like a beautiful day outside. Get out there, enjoy it. These are the summer days we wait for, and we'll talk to you again on Friday.